Hello guys, welcome back to Ace of Info YouTube channel. So today we will talk about static keyword. Alright, in Java it is good to understand static keyword better. Alright, so demonstrate on static keyword. Let me go to our IDE and create a new class here. New class. I will say demo static to demonstrate in static. Alright, I will create the main method too. Alright, so to understand it better, I will create a new class of Hogwarts. We all love Hogwarts, so let's take Hogwarts. Alright, now suppose in Hogwarts school, each student has an index number and they have GPA. Okay, alright, and let's represent the headmaster with a string headmaster. Now there's index, GPA and the headmaster. Now go to main method and let's create new objects. So this time I will create new students. Alright, so I will give the class name Hogwarts and I will give a name Potter. Right, we have Mr. Potter and new Hogwarts. Okay, so now what we have to do is we can assign index of Potter and I will say it is 1, and we can assign GPA of Potter. Well, I will give a GPA of like 1.8. well, he's so busy fighting with Voldemort, so he doesn't have a good GPA. Okay, and let's take his headmaster. Who will be the headmaster? Let's take Dumbledore. Okay, he's not dead yet. Dumbledore. So now we have an object called Mr. Potter, and now this Potter has index of 1 and his GPA is 1.8 and his headmaster is Dumbledore. Now in the class, let me create a new method to show this all information. Okay, and it should be void because I'm just printing it, not returning anything, and I will give a method name of info. So in here I'm just printing these values. I will put new lines here, otherwise this will be a little bit confused. Good. Now we have a method called info. So if we want to call this method using Mr. Potter's object, you can use potter.info. So we are getting information of Mr. Potter, and if I run this now, we get index, GPA and headmaster of Mr. Potter. Alright, now let's create another object. This time we will take who? Let's take Hermione. Okay, another student we took, and let's assign these values. Hermione's index as, let's say, 1, and take Hermione's GPA. What would be her GPA? Of course it should be like a 4.2 or something. And Hermione's headmaster. Who's the headmaster? It's Dumbledore. And now if we take Hermione's information and if I print it now, you can see we get her information. Right, I will put a new line here. Okay, I'll print it. Alright, so this is Mr. Potter's information and this is Miss Granger's or Miss Hermione's information. Alright, now the point is they both have the same headmaster, right? Mr. Potter's headmaster is Dumbledore and Hermione's headmaster is also Dumbledore. Now suppose Dumbledore dies. Alright, now Dumbledore dies. Now who will be the new headmaster of Mr. Potter? It will be Severus. Now Potter's new headmaster is Snape. Severus Snape. Alright. Now if I print this, now Mr. Potter's headmaster has changed. Now if I print this, we get Mr. Potter's headmaster as Snape, but Hermione's headmaster is still Dumbledore. Now that can't be right? So both of them are going to the same school. So if one person's headmaster changed, every student's headmaster should be changed. Alright. But that doesn't happen here. So if you want that to happen to Hermione too, you can say Hermione.headmaster and change her headmaster to Snape. Alright, but that is not a good practice, right? We don't want to tell that every student's headmaster has changed. We just have to say only one person's headmaster has changed, and then we need to say every other student headmaster should be changed. Now to do that, we use static keyword. Alright. Now these kind of situations where we use the static keyword. So here in the headmaster variable, I have to put the static. We are making this string to be static. Now if I run this, you can see Hermione's headmaster also has changed to Snape. Alright. So the meaning of static keyword is that we are putting this variable, string headmaster variable, to be class specific, not object specific. Which means if you assign any value to this variable, for this static variable, it will be the same for every object in that class. It doesn't matter how many objects you create, it will be Mr. Potter, Hermione, Ron or anyone. Still, this headmaster will be the one that we assign last. Right? Still, this headmaster will have only one value for each and every object. So that value here is the Potter.headmaster is Snape. Doesn't matter what are the previous values. The latest value will be taken to that variable and it will be assigned to Hermione and every other student. Okay, so mainly with this static keyword, we are putting variables to be class specific. We don't want them to be object specific. So what is the meaning of that? So here this headmaster is not object specific. So we can use, instead of Mr. Potter, we can use the class name. What is the class name? Hogwarts. You can see there's no error, because in this way we are telling to change the GPA of this object. But here, instead of object, we can use class name to change this variable. That can be achieved just because this is static. Alright. So here also we can use Hogwarts, the class name. Here also we can use Hogwarts, the class name. And if I run this, you can see it works fine. Alright. Now there's one more thing. Now in our previous video, we remember that we use constructors. We use constructors to assign values, right? So to assign value for index, I will say initially 1, and GPA, initially I say 2.5, and initial headmaster will be Dumbledore. Okay, let's just say it's Dumbledore. So what will be the use? Every object we create with this constructor, Hogwarts constructor like this, will have these values for index, GPA and headmaster. So if I give a headmaster like Umbridge, she was headmaster for a very short time. Now when we call this constructor using any object, these values will be taken to these variables. Now if I remove these and this one, so I just created object, I didn't assign any value, and now if I print this, what will happen? We get initial values, index 1, GPA 2.5, which I put here, and the headmaster as Umbridge. Okay, we get initial values. So, but here this headmaster is static, right? So we don't need to say headmaster is Umbridge all the time we create every object. Instead, what you can do is you can go here and create a new block called static. Inside of this static block, you can put headmaster value. I will say Umbridge, and I can remove this. Now if I run this, you can see headmaster value is Umbridge. Alright, so what happens in this static block is that we are loading this memory to the class memory. Right, so if we put values to these constructors, these values will be loaded every time we create an object. But if you use a static block and put that value inside of the static block, this will be loaded to class. It doesn't matter how many objects you create, it will be loaded only once. When you run the program, it will be loaded only once. Alright, so to understand it better, I will put a new print line here. I will print this is static block, and here I will print this is the constructor. Alright, now let's run this. Right, so you can see this static block is printed only once. Why is that? Because when you run this code, this static block executes only once, because this is loaded to class and class is loaded only once. But when you create two objects, you are calling this constructor two times, with the object of Potter and with the object of Hermione. That is why for each and every time, in this case 2 times, this constructor statement is printed, because this block has been executed 2 times. Alright, so the thing to remember is this static block is loaded to class. Now which means whenever you run the code, this static block is executed first. Right, you can see this is the first line, right? Static block is the first line, which means this block has been executed first. Now that's not because we put this in the front of the class. Now if I remove this here and if I put to here somewhere, okay, after the constructor, and if I run this, you can see still this statement is printed first. That's because when you load the class, this static block will be printed first. Right, after that whatever you have will be executed. Alright, that is a very important thing to remember. So you can just create an static block and you can have that value, static value, to inside of here. So you don't have to put inside the constructor and load it every time you create an object. You can do it just once by using static block. Alright, so that is pretty much about static keyword. But addition to this, let's say we have integer name num here. I will say integer num. Okay, I will give an initial value 0, initial value of 2. Okay. And now inside of here, can we access that num? And if I use num and if I try to change that value to 6, is that possible? No, we get an error. Why is that? Now you can see we are inside static method. Now main method is a static method. Now why is the main method static? You can see here in the static block, it doesn't matter about object. It doesn't matter we call with the object or not. This block will be executed. Even if you don't call this static block, it will be executed without any object. So that is why we use this static. Okay, whenever we use static with any method, in this case the main method, it will be executed without any object. It doesn't need any object to call. This method will be called itself when we load the class. So that is why we use main method in static, because we don't need any object to call main method. We want to run the main method without objects. Now we are inside of static method. That is why we can't use non-static variable. So if you are inside of a static method, you have to use static variables only. So I have to put this to static. Now you can see it well. So the thing to remember is you can't access non-static variables inside static methods. It have to be static variable. Alright, so that is pretty much everything about static keyword. I hope it was useful for you. So thank you for watching the video. Please consider subscribing us and see you soon with our next video.